You're with The Current, and I am beyond honored to be hanging out with Jon Batiste, a musical legend who is nice enough to be taking a little bit of time out of his day to share some songs with us and some conversation. And I also want to give a big shout out to all of the members of Minnesota Public Radio who are making this possible and who are hanging out with us today. So let's welcome Jon Batiste. Jon, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm thinking about all of the different things that we're going to talk about and music that we're going to play, and I'm just excited to be able to share this time with you.
Well, the feeling is very, very mutual, and I'm a huge fan of your music. And it does seem like, compared to some of the more instrumentally oriented records that you've released, We Are is going to be a different kind of thing. Can you talk to me about your desire to put out this kind of record and how it came to be?
Well, artists are always creating, and I'm no different in that I have stores of archival recordings, I call them. Recordings of full albums of all different styles and music that I've made when I was traveling to Havana or traveling to different parts of the world and playing with different musicians. And this is just a culmination of so many life experiences of mine, and it just lines up with where the world is in a lot of ways, culturally, globally, and then, of course, my personal heritage. Those are kind of the three poles of what I was feeling over the course of many years. And starting in 2019, I decided I wanted to take the music that I was making in my dressing room at the Ed Sullivan Theater during this 6-day session and make it into an album. And that was an 8-month process after that kind of initial 6-day feverish creative zone that I created with, collaborators coming in and out between sound checks and rehearsals and me doing other projects and coming back in around the clock recording in my dressing room, which, by the way, happens to be the dressing room of the great Carol Burnett, who, when I got a chance to work with her, she told me all these stories. And it felt like there were spirits and energy in the room that we were tapping into.
And now that wouldn't even be the most precarious place you've recorded a record, right? Because didn't you make a whole record in the subway as well?
Yes, actually, it's called My NY, and that record we made that in the subway and on the street corners of New York City. It was a special time too. Everything is about timing for me. If you get the sense already, I'm always trying to figure out how to make the music that I put out not just be something that really means something to me creatively, but aligns with the times that we're in ways, whether it's direct and explicit or even if it's allegorical.
So are you the type of man who you'll be sitting at a beautiful grand piano and Sunset Sound and just go, this is too comfortable. I wish I was in a cramped backstage, or wish I was on a subway. Do you get some kind of extra challenge out of being in a unconventional environment for your recording and writing?
I like to be in a place where I can feel the stimulus of the world around me. So I like to record in non-traditional places because I like to get the inspiration from, the world and the people and the sounds. I like performing in non-traditional, unorthodox places as well, because something about that inspires something different to what you would get from your typical studio or your typical stage. But I do oftentimes like the blend. So, with this album, with We Are, we recorded in the dressing room. And then we also did some field recordings, some street recordings, and we also went to many recording studios. We recorded in some old churches. I'm going to capture these different energies and this different stimuli and create this painting. It's like a canvas, it's an empty canvas, and I'm taking all these different colors, and every color adds something different when it's blended to the color that's next to it.
Well, we love what you've put together, and we're excited to hear some. I want to ask you one question from one of our members and then get into a tune. Sharon had a question, which is, when did you start to play piano? And I'll add to that, when did you start to play music? Because I know you were first a saxophone player. And then did you initially play by ear, or were you dealing with notation right away in your musical journey?
Great question. So I started with music early in my youth, not as early as many who I grew up with, but around 8 or 9. And at that time, I was playing drums and percussion, And my real interest in piano started when I was 11 and moved into the high school years. By the time I was 14, I was leading bands and I was doing a lot of different studying and recording. And I studied before that in classical music. So I was studying classical music at the same time as I was, oddly enough, I learned a lot from video game music. I
Okay.
would listen to video game music as a kid when I was playing, and I didn't know, but my subconscious mind was taking these ideas and these themes from the games and creating musical connections. And it was a real precursor to my composition and an approach to music. So the mix of video game music, growing up in New Orleans in a musical family, studying classical piano, and then eventually getting into jazz in middle school and high school and leading my own bands. A blend of all of that was what I was doing.
Well, the blend of all of it is pretty intoxicating when you do release your own music as well. Let's get into a song, check out a song, and then we'll have some more conversation. So honored to be with you, Jon Batiste.
Absolutely. When I move my body just like this, I don't know why, but it feels like freedom. I hear a song that takes me back, and I let go with so much freedom. Free to live, I wanna live. I'm gonna get what I'm gonna get, 'cause it's my freedom. I love how you talk, you speak in my language. The way that you walk, you can't contain it. Is it the shoes, jumped up kangaroo? We're overdue for a little more prancing. Now is your time, you can shine. If you do, I'ma do too. When I move my body just like this, I don't know why, but it feels like freedom. I hear a song that takes me back, and I let go with so much freedom. Free to live how I wanna live. I'm gonna get what I'm gonna get, 'cause it's my freedom. The reason we get down is to get back up. If someone's around, go on, let them look. You can't stand still. This ain't no drill. More than cheap thrills. Feel like money, 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 money. Now is your time. You can shine. Free to live how I wanna live. I'm gonna get what I'm gonna get, 'cause it's my freedom. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, on behalf of all the people who I'm sure are clapping during their lunch break, I'm going to clap because that is beautiful. You make beautiful music. And in that song, you're singing about freedom and you're talking about moving your body as part of freedom. And I think you're talking about more than that as well. Can you tell me a little bit about what freedom means to you in the world and in musical pursuits?
Freedom is the right, as Mavis Staples says on the album. She says a beautiful quote about freedom is the right for men and women to do what they want. And really, that's a very simple definition, but it can be difficult to exercise your right to do what you want and to exist as you are when things may be trying to cloud that or block that. And I don't think that it's a do what you want, like whatever you want, no matter if it hurts anybody. But it's a do what you want based on the idea that you're a part of the greater whole, and everyone is equal, and everyone has the right to be able to exist as they want. And that's really what it is in music that is beautiful. Everything in music that you love and all the different ways music has been used is amazing when you think that there's only these 12 notes and everybody has had these 12 notes. Beethoven, Nina Simone, James Brown, and the freedom of how they use those notes and approach those notes in musical pursuits is what we love. We love to hear how this generation, this person is going to use the notes different to how anyone in centuries past have used those notes. And that's really what I'm all about, taking things from the past and blending them with the things in the present to create the future. And that's freedom to me.
Well, it's freedom to our ears as well, and it sounds wonderful. You mentioned Mavis Staples in that, and I'm getting questions here from the folks who are watching, and one that's really pertinent to, it sounds like, the way you like to put together music, has to do with being inspired by the times and digesting that along with your own influences and musical heritage. This is a question from a gentleman named Nate. Are you inspired by past musicians who you feel also lived up to that credo of making music of the times? Who are your heroes? Who are the sort of the gold standard for folks who digested the times and put it into their music?
Oh my, yes, absolutely. No, I'm very influenced by the inspiration from the past. To me, that's where inspiration comes from. Inspiration comes from the past, and the creativity to create what will be the future is really the goal of the artist who is in the present. And I think that Stevie Wonder, who has called me for my birthday every year on my birthday for the last 5 years, and always kind of helps me to set my intentions, because my birthday is at the end of the year in November, and it's almost like it's like doing your New Year's resolution with Stevie Wonder. And Stevie is one of those heroes to me in the sense of his songs in the key of life or his inner visions, the way that those recordings captured the time and also brought so many things from the past into his present day creative environment to create now what has influenced the future, as we've seen in the wake of those albums being released. And that's really someone who, as a person who has talked to me when I was making this album, was really influential on me.
You get a birthday call from Stevie Wonder. That's got to be one of the greatest feelings in the world. Like, I would just have a legend like that ring up your phone. Stevie Wonder, beyond his incredible work in the studio and live, has been an outspoken activist. The man is largely responsible for us having Martin Luther King Jr. Day. He took, in some sense, more than a year off from his musical career to make sure that he was very active in campaigning for this holiday. He's done a lot to fight for social justice. Does that inspire you in your path, his work, outside and beyond his work in the studio and in live concerts?
Yes, I think it's important when you're an artist and you have a platform, particularly someone who is revered by the younger generation, to use your platform to do something that will help that generation to have a better shot at life than even you did, even if you had a great shot. My ancestral line goes back all the way to Benin and the Congo and the Yoruba people, and then the southern Louisiana Creoles, and then the sharecroppers. And I have 4 generations of family farmers from Georgia and into Mississippi, and then New Orleans was where my grandparents on both sides settled, and my family line is in music. So there's so much that is culminated into me having the shot that I have today to be in this position where I'm so privileged and have so many things that I've been able to do because of their sacrifices and their advancement over generations. But then there's also things that I want to be even better for my children and the folks who are coming in the next generation. So for me, it's really all about improvement and policy and all these different things that we go out and really talk about and try to activate the public around are really just about the improvement of humanity.
Yep.
And the improvement of humanity and the expansion of opportunities to everyone so that everybody can have a chance to be as great as they can be. And our human resources are our greatest natural resource. And we're wasting those resources every generation when we don't give the folks everywhere the opportunity to do the things that they could be great at. You know, that's really where my beliefs come from. It's this idea that we all have this dual nature. We have our lower selves, and we have these things that feed our higher selves, our spiritual self, our divine self, music, art, family, community, and exercising our gifts. And that's really what inspires me in music and also in activism and also just as a person.
Well, thank you for feeding us during this lunch break and bringing us music and inspiration. Let's get into another song. And Jon, just thank you for being so open and hanging out with our members and playing some music for us today. Looking forward to catching another tune.
Yes, indeed. Hello, members. How you feeling out there? Lunchtime. Hey. I just need you, oh yeah. Bet when I was a little country boy, and I never put down that pork chop and salt. Jumping down on the boulevard, I couldn't wait to blow my own horn. It ain't wrong for you to play along, playing this song till you die. In this world with a lot of problems, all we need is a little loving. Thank you, oh you make me thank you for your love. We've done a lot of living, we working overtime. Don't need another million, you got the gold mine. I love the way you're living, girl, you're so genuine. You got that something special, didn't you know? I just need you, oh yeah. Met you when I was a little country boy, and never put down the pork chop and salt. Fell in love on the boulevard. If you was Jenny, I guess I was Forrest. Now it ain't wrong for you to sing along, singing this song till you die. In this world with a lot of problems, all we need is a little loving. Thank you, oh you make me thank you for your love. Come on, member. Blues scale. Hey, yeah. I need you, 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 you. Oh. Yeah.
Man, when you're walking a bass line and you're soloing at the same time and you're kind of encouraging yourself with your vocals, do you feel like you're doing one thing or do you feel like you're doing four things? Like, where is your head at when you're working in so many different avenues?
I'm thinking about the feel of it all. You know, I'm thinking about it as one thing. It's all just a great feeling to capture, and it's not about the theory or the notes. I never think about theory or notes. I know all of that stuff very well. Obviously, that's something I've studied intensely. I just don't think about it when I'm playing. I just think about feeling, and I try to approach it as a child would approach it. So I'm always trying to surprise myself. So when you hear me talking to myself, it literally is me feeling a sense of discovery while I'm playing. I just want to. That's my goal when I'm playing, is to capture a feeling and to surprise myself. Because if I surprise myself, then I'm sure that people will feel surprised and feel that there's something that is capturing them. It's a journey.
You work a lot of discovery-like energy into your music, even in pretty highly structured places like a late night television show. I was watching the first night that you were doing the gig so many years ago now, and you exuded so much comfort and so much enthusiasm about your fellow players on night one, right? Like I wasn't watching, but I'm sure the first night for Kevin Eubanks, he was like, "Let's get everything right." Like, Paul Schaefer, let's get everything right. But you, from night one, I was like, this man is about his collaborators, and this man is about the surprise of the moment. That I can channel that on a late night jam session with 12 people watching. How have you been able to maintain that sort of level of letting the music come to you and the freedom that I hear every time you touch the keyboard, and I even hear when you don't, when I just see you with your hands above the keyboard just enjoying what the rest of the band is doing? How do you keep that freedom in these really demanding, stressful settings?
I think the beauty of understanding where your gift comes from and how it resonates. My gift as a musician, as a band leader, as an artist, comes from the things that make me unique, and we all have things that make us all very unique. Everything about you and everything about your family and everything about your experiences and all these things that have culminated into you being you are so unique. And as an artist, your goal is to take those things and use them as the impetus to create. That's you're taking that stuff and filtering the world around you through your unique sensibility. And that means that there's nothing that you can do that is wrong if you're sticking with who you are and presenting that in all different occasions and all different setups. You can't lose if you're yourself. And that's really something that took years of me really kind of practicing that almost as a spiritual practice. Joy is a spiritual practice. Authenticity is a spiritual practice. All these different ways of being are a spiritual practice. And as an artist, listening to music and playing music is like a spiritual ritual. And if you think about it like that, then you're not going to be stuck on technical aspects or theoretical aspects of music making or the technical aspect of being in a production or a film score. You're going to be good at that because you've practiced and studied. Going to Juilliard and being from this musical environment and soaking all that up at an early age, it helps. But it's not the end-all, be-all. The end-all, be-all is who are you, and let's hear that, and let's see that, let's feel that.
I think you did bring a lot of yourself to the work you just did on the Soul soundtrack and the score, and congratulations on the Golden Globe. You got a question about this from Valerie Dean. She says, do you have plans to work on additional films? And also, what was it like working with Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross? Another person asked that question. What was that working experience like? And do you have any plans to do more work in the film world?
Yes, actually, there's a lot of stuff in the works. And Pixar has been a great collaborator. I can't talk about much of it right now, but
I understand.
but it's great. I do plan to. Yes, the answer is yes to that. It's something that I've always done on the side of obviously being a musician, artist, and making albums and touring and things like that. I've worked on 2 Spike Lee films. I worked on Treme and different things in film and TV, and obviously recently with the show, it's brought other opportunities. But I continue to build on that in this time, in particular when we can't tour. It's always been a dream of mine to go in that direction more and more, and I think it's happening earlier and earlier because of where we are in the world, which I'm not at all mad about. And I think Trent and Atticus have been some of the greatest collaborators that I've known. It was really great to when we first met. You know, I started working on Soul 2 years ago, and it was a 2 year process of working on the score. And the score was something that even before the film was made and finished, we were working on the music, and we would send music back and forth to each other. We would sit and listen, and at moments we split the score, and other parts we worked together. And it was a beautiful collaboration because we all just had the same intention. It wasn't something that felt like we were trying to blend genres or anything. I don't even believe in genres. It's just people and their music and their expression. And that's what it's about when you align the intentions together, which from the beginning, we all just wanted to make something that was innovative and unique and special. And that's what the collaboration was like across the board with everybody. Trent, Atticus, all the folks at Pixar. It was just a beautiful, open collaboration.
Well, I mean, the proof is in the pudding. It is such an incredible selection of tunes, and your work on it is really, really awesome. And congratulations on the success, and hopefully more of that in the future. And I understand can't talk details, but we will be waiting with bated breath. You brought up something in that last conversation about the fact that traveling right now is not as possible, especially traveling with a musical ensemble. And Deb wrote a question. How important is performing with other musicians to you creatively, and how has social distancing affected your creative process?
I've always loved performing with other musicians, and I'll always love that because it's a different feeling to anything in music. It's different to being in the studio. It's different to writing and composing and arranging. It's different to producing. Playing with musicians in a room for people is unmatched. And it's really changed a lot of how I appreciate it. You know, we did something recently, which was the first time I played for people in months. And that was when we played for folks at the Javits Center in New York City. We played for the essential workers and for the vaccination workers. And we played for 30 of them, and we played for the folks who were in the vaccination clinic. And, you know, it was a really cumbersome process, obviously, to get tested 4 or 5 times and to have the distancing, and the musicians had to be 6 to 12 feet apart, and horn players had to be 12 feet apart, and we had to limit the number of musicians. But even going through all of the hoops of that made me realize how much I miss playing for people and how special that exchange is, which I think will be even more heightened emotionally once we're out of the pandemic, because people will have not felt that, and when they do, it will be times 10, and for the musicians, it will be times 10. So
Yeah.
when we get a chance to tour this album and to present the kind of love, joy, and community vibration that I always bring to the shows that I do, I think it's going to be some of the best live performances that I've ever had the chance of being the spearhead of. And I'm looking forward to really getting out on the road whenever that is, you know.
Even with the horn players 12 feet apart, was the trombone still too loud? You mentioned your work. You mentioned your work on Treme, and New Orleans is just so palpable in all the music you do. And you also mentioned spending a little bit of time in Havana, and I've heard people say that New Orleans is really should be understood as a Caribbean city as far as the background. And so I was curious, what is misunderstood about New Orleans music and the relationship with Cuban music, and then what's special about coming up in such a musically fertile city? So.
Well, what's special about New Orleans music that's misunderstood often is that it's just a party city where people are just having a good time, and Bourbon Street and all this stuff that you see in the kind of propaganda, tourism propaganda, that's all that it's about. And it's so much deeper than that. It's really a manifestation of what America and American idealism is all about, in that you have a city that is a blend of the African, French, Spanish, English, Caribbean, all of these blends, and it's built into the city, baked into the city in the architecture, in the music, in the customs and traditions, in the cuisine. It's amazing that there's attire for things, and there's rituals and practices and traditions that are embedded in this place for centuries, and is an example of what American compromise and the coexistence of cultures underneath the American ideal is really all about. And to have a form of music that is born from that, that is the birthplace and the root music of all of these styles of American music, whether it's root music of blues and Americana and folk and blues, gospel and spiritual gospel, and oh man, jazz music obviously, but even early traditional jazz and New Orleans music and march music, literally from one place, having such an influence on the DNA of that much of American culture, and being at the foundation of the American ideal and representing that in a way that almost nowhere else in the world has been able to capture this kind of confluence of cultures. It's actually so hard to conceptualize and explain, that the celebratory aspect of New Orleans culture and how that is such an infectious part of Mardi Gras and everything overshadows the depth and the real the specialness of New Orleans even existing in the world.
Well, I got to say, I think your work, both as an actor and also musically on Treme, did some service to communicate a little bit more of the depth of New Orleans. Did you ever see a movie that Branford Marsalis made years ago called The Music Tells You about his do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's like a doc. I remember that.
Yeah, it's a documentary. It was just that was the first musician I knew much about from New Orleans who was, a contemporary musician, and he talks so much about, like, if you see somebody in New Orleans 5 times that day, you will say hello to them 5 times. You won't, he said in New York you just go hi and then you never have to say hello to him again. But all this is this greeting and this cordialness. But actually, the whole time you've been talking today, I've been thinking about that movie, especially because it's called The Music Tells You, because he's kind of talking about the fact that people think I get up here and play whatever I want. I play nothing I want. I play exactly what the music tells me to play. And obviously, he's a very fierce improviser. You are as well. And I see that level of freedom in both of your work, that it just seems like you're communicating with this idea of it's not up to you what's about to happen. You're going to listen to where the music wants to take you. And it's taken you to incredible spaces, and we're so excited to see what is coming next. I mean, it's the single Cry. I didn't expect a tune like that. That I didn't anticipate that out of your work, and we're loving I Need You. And I just would love to hear another tune that you want to share with us. And I also want to give another big heartfelt thank to the members of Minnesota Public Radio making this thing possible. And of course, Jon, thank you so much for playing music for us today. So.
The members of NPR, I really feel like Minnesota Public Radio is such a beautiful thing to be a part of. I remember when I did Live from Here. And,
Yes.
One of my greatest collaborators, which were nominated for a Grammy this year for an album we did together, Corey Wong, the guitarist, lives in Minnesota, is from Minnesota, and our Meditations album is up
That
for a
album's
Grammy for Best
that's
New
up for a
Age.
Grammy?
Yes, it's up for a Grammy for Best New Age, and I'm up for another Grammy for the Live at the Vanguard recordings. So, this is just a really special place to have the music represented in Minnesota is really leading the way. I love playing on Live from Here. I don't know if you've seen that episode or heard that episode, but
I actually did, and it's recorded just down the street. And you were filling in for Chris Thiele, and I got my I host on Saturday nights, so I was DJing 2 blocks away from you. I got my friend in on the guest list, and he was like, "That was incredible." I'm trying to remember the name of the soul singer from New York who was the musical guest with you. I can't remember.
yes, Emily King.
Emily King. Yeah, I mean, I love her music, and you two together. I mean, that was just a very, very cool thing. And actually, I should ask you, Corey Wong is such a big name in Minnesota, but somehow he's also become so connected with you and so many other great national caliber musicians. How did you connect with Corey, and then how did you come to make this Meditations album with him?
Oh my goodness! So Corey was in a band. He's in the band Wolfpack, and Wolfpack, I've always been a fan of what they're doing, and I was listening to them, and he was playing with them at some, I believe it was a live performance or a video that I saw, one or the other. I just noticed the guitarist, and eventually when I was asked to host NPR on NPR the live from here for Chris, because he was actually, I was filling in for Chris. Chris wasn't there. I was hosting the show, and they asked me to put not only my band together but a whole house band. You know, like
Gotcha.
a completely different ensemble to Stay Human, blended with Stay Human, obviously, but just something that could fit the mold of the show. And I told him I wanted to call Corey Wong, because I heard his guitars and I was like, this guy's great. Who is this? And we met there and got a chance to really work together for the first time on Live from Here in Minnesota. And
What a trip.
and I was just so shocked by how he could play so many different styles with great rhythm and precision. And I felt like we had a really interesting chemistry that needed to be expanded on. And I had him come and join the Late Show House Band several times. And one of those trips, I told him we should cut a recording together based on something that we were jamming on, again, in my dressing room. And this was recorded in the breaks of the studio time between recording We Are, which Corey is also playing a lot on We Are. The album We Are and the album Meditations were recorded at the same time in the same period of sessions. So that's a little known fact, but that's how it actually happened.
Wow. I've known Corey for a long time, and he's such an incredible player. So that's so cool that y'all connected. Let's get into a tune, and then we'll probably wrap things up. I'll see if there's any more questions coming in. But if you don't mind sharing one more piece of music, we'd sure appreciate it.
Absolutely. And speaking of Emily King, this is Cry, which Emily is singing the background vocals on Cry on the album.
Oh,
And
I got you. And are you playing the
she's
guitar on it?
Yes, and
Okay.
as well as Steve McEwen, who I co-wrote the song with, and Robert Randolph of Robert Randolph and the Family Band.
Yeah.
Who do you love? Who you gonna love? Who do you love when push comes to shove? How does it feel? How's it gonna feel? How does it feel when it's getting too real? And why sometimes does it seem like all I wanna do? All I wanna do is cry, cry, cry. Cry, cry, cry. Cry, cry, cry. Cry, cry, cry. What can you say? What you gonna say to make it okay? And who's gonna pay? Who will you fight? How you gonna fight? Who will you fight to make it alright? And why sometimes does it feel like all I wanna do? All I wanna do is cry, cry, cry. Cry, cry, cry. Cry, cry, cry. Cry, cry, cry. Little taste.
The when you co-write with somebody on a tune like that, how does that go? How is what does Steve bring to the tune? What did you bring to the tune? How did you arrive at the final rendition?
Steve and I's collaboration is different to what most of my collaborations are like, because typically what happens is I'll always write the lyrics to the verse and almost always the chorus, and my collaborators are typically there. You know, for instance, Kizzo and Autumn Rowe, who I worked on the album with on 4 or 5 different tracks, they're contributing different melodic ideas and helping to produce and round out the track. But as far as the story, it's like writing a script. And if I'm the lead actor in a film, I want to feel like I can authentically portray that. But with Steve, we have a really good understanding as to how to. It's almost like a Gamble and Huff kind of a thing where he'll sometimes have a chord or a feel or like a title, and that'll inspire me to do something, and I'll take it and write something. Then he'll look at it and almost it's like an editor, or he'll suggest, what if you put this or that there, and it kind of goes back and forth. It's more like that versus, with some of the other collaborations, we'll have a moment where it's like a day where we'll create a demo, and then I'll take it off and go write for maybe 4 or 5 months, or I'll build the production for 4 or 5 months. I have to kind of take it and go away. Whereas with Steve, it's more of this back and forth.
Well, both techniques seem to work pretty darn well because the music all sounds fantastic. I'm going to ask you one question, and then I think let you get onto your way. I know you have a very, very busy day. Sharon asked a question. Being from New Orleans, do you have any background singing in French? Have you ever done any work in the Francophone world in music?
So funny you asked that. I'm working on something right now. I can't say it, but my grandfather's Creole French, and he had the Creole French dialect. It's kind of like the Cajun speaking version of French.
Gotcha.
And when we were growing up, he always would talk in that way. And sometimes, it would be a mix of English and French. It's like a patois. So he had songs that we would sing in that kind of dialect from when he was from Lafayette, Louisiana, which is it's a Cajun capital of Louisiana. And, it's where Clifton Chenier is from, the Zydeco, Zydeco accordion king, Zydeco king of all of the Cajun music of our Louisiana homeland. And I learned that, but I don't do it publicly often enough. I think I should. I'm trying not to tell you about this project until it's done. But there's a song, "Et la basse," that is it's a traditional song. I've done that one. I like that kind of stuff, but I have to work it out because I don't live with them anymore. Obviously, my grandfather passed away, and since he's gone, we don't speak it as much,
Gotcha. Well, I understand you got to keep tight-lipped about certain things, but I'm sure that when you do bring a little French into your musical universe, it'll be very enjoyable.
I think it's gonna be a vibe.
Jon, I will say it is always a vibe with you. There's not a random Thursday in the middle of November that I haven't seen you bring it on. Stephen Colbert. Like, it's just, you always bring that spirit, and it's contagious. It's contagious right now. I'm gonna have a pep in my step for the rest of the day, just being around your energy for an hour. I imagine that's true for everybody who's hanging out. All of our members. Jon, from the bottom of our hearts, thank you for being here, for taking some time, and also to all the NPR members that make this possible. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you. I love y'all. Have a good one.